passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my always. I can't blame you, no, passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my always. I can't blame you, no. Listen, heart of building trust from a distance. I think we should roll our commitment for now, 'cause we're falling apart. Leaving, you're just doing that to get even. Don't pick up the pieces, just leave it for now. They keep falling apart. Passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my always. I can't blame you, no, no. Passionate from miles away, passive with
Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome today to the 5th in our series of our international webinars. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome all our international delegates who are joining us here today from many countries around the world in partnership with the World Health Organization. We also welcome our Irish delegates who are coming in at local level to understand what's happening in an Irish context. I'm particularly excited about this domain that we're covering today of transportation. Transport, I suppose when we started back in 2009 and 2008 consulting, was one of the key issues and barriers that older people found in relation to every aspect of their life, whether it was through missed hospital appointments, whether it was through rural, whether it was through roads, infrastructure, air travel, whatever the case may be. Lots of older people had raised their issues, but in saying that, had come up with really, really innovative solutions to transportation. So I'm delighted today to be able to showcase some of the wonderful practices that have been implemented over the last 12 years, which span transportation at the core, but also have peripheral benefits in terms of our built environment. I'm joined today by our colleagues, Naomi Rooney from the National Transport Authority. Naomi is a long colleague of ours from the National Transport, and I'll give a little bit more bio on her. We're delighted to have them today, who we work in partnership with very, very closely. We also have Miriam McKenna. Miriam and I have been working together for at least 13 years, and she's very, very passionate about transport, lives in a rural part of the country and really knows the ins and outs, and that's why her service, I said, is second to none. So we're really delighted to have Miriam here today. I have two colleagues, age-friendly programme managers from Mayo and Clare, two of the most westerly counties in Ireland, and they'll be talking about their experience in terms of the age-friendly airport, but also bringing in a little bit about their role, and also just to acknowledge our regional programme manager, Anne Rizzo, who has been very instrumental in the airport process as well. So a really diverse range of topics today, and we'll be having a good questions and answer session. So can I ask you to go into Slido and send your questions through in relation to any of the topics, even if they're outside the parameters of the presentations that we're having today, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start with our first presentation, upcoming transport developments, Connecting Ireland and Bus Connects from Naomi. Naomi was an engineer with Fingal County Council for over 20 years, working on the built environment, roads, planning around building regs. But her passion really lies on, I suppose, seeing the challenges that having to retrospectively fix things. And what she's really passionate about is making sure that at design and development stage, we're building in accessibility, ageing, diverse needs and different capabilities. And I think that spans, Naomi, not just transportation, but your passion in areas of housing and the whole built environment. So we're really delighted. Naomi has been working with us on a number of different key elements. As you know, through our Older People's Council, we have a transport subgroup, and Naomi coordinates and is a member of that. So she is listening directly to the authentic voice of older people, which is really, really important. And as a state agency, that's really, really important to have that level of, I suppose, a voice within what they do. So Naomi, we're really delighted to have you today and looking forward to the question and answers.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Naomi Rooney. I'm the Transport Accessibility Manager from the NTA. I'm just here to give you a brief overview of the upcoming transport developments, which includes Connecting Ireland and Bus Connects. The Connecting Ireland policy basically comes from the National Planning Framework and the Climate Action Plan, which is to provide a 50% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030, and also to provide high quality, accessible transport, which connects people across Ireland. There are challenges though. The transport sector is the biggest contributor to Ireland's carbon dioxide emissions. We as a nation are too dependent on the private car, as 7 out of 10 journeys presently are by car, and 50% of the trips are under 2 kilometres, which is around 25-minute walk. The number of cars registered in Ireland is growing faster than the population. There's more traffic congestion. Car parking takes valuable space away from pedestrians, and poor access to transport can result in social isolation. So I suppose we need a range of plans to address these challenges. The objectives of Connecting Ireland is quantity, quality and usability of public transport outside of the major towns of Ireland. So the quantity is connecting more people to more places than is presently the case. Quality, providing an attractive service that would allow people to leave their car to take public transport, and usability to make it an integrated and joined up network between trains, trams, buses, etc. So we tried to introduce a systematic approach to planning new routes and services in partnership with feedback we receive regarding the public transport network planning. So when and why do people travel? Well, from this graph here, you can see that 28% of people travel really for work or business, followed then by 23% for education, but it's also for shopping, social, personal events as well. How people travel from this, you can see that 71% of people travel by car presently, with 18% of walking. Public transport represents around 5% nationwide. What time of the day do people travel? The peak of around 13% seems to be between sort of 7:30 and 8:30, and then tapers off throughout the day with another slight peak around 4 o'clock. The overview of research done by the NTA looked at different things, but we categorised every settlement in the state or the nation. We looked at existing connections provided by the public transport between settlements, and we saw where the gaps were. We tried to design new services to enhance the existing public transport or totally provide new connections to fill these gaps. So we basically devised it into different types of settlements. So for the first one is rural, which is made up of one-off houses or small clusters of housing with limited numbers of settlement. Villages, which would have some service or amenities. Local centres, such as post office, grocery shops, library, businesses. Then there's county towns, which have maybe county offices or some hospital services, retails and restaurants, and then it goes up to regional centres or cities. So from that, we undertook analysis of each of the settlements. And when we looked at a lot of the towns, we saw that maybe 60% had connections to other towns, 40% did not. There was an even connectivity between areas. So say in this graph here in the green, and that's Sligo, and Leitrim is there in grey. So in Sligo, 1 out of the 10 houses are connected, whereas in Leitrim, 7 out of 18 are not connected. So there's even discrepancies between counties. When we looked at the timetable frequency of the services, there was big variances between counties and between towns. Some had higher frequencies and some had very low frequencies. Some of the feedback we got was that there was no interaction between local link and public transport, buses, coaches, trains, connectivity between their services or the timings of them. So just to give you an example of, say, County Meath, there's a map of Meath, and we see here that the villages, they're connected to 60% of the local centres, 50% of the towns, and 61% of the villages are connected to the regional cities. Then local centres, 80% of them are connected to the county town, and more, 93% were connected to the regional centres. So there are some gaps to be filled there. And looking in Meath, where people live, 34% appear to live in the cities, with sort of 15% in the county towns and 30% in the outside settlement. The age profile of Meath was that 21% are under 14, 65% are 15 to 64, and 13% are greater than 65 years of age. So where do people travel in Meath? So say means of travel to work, just looking at, say, driving by car, 66% of people travel to work by car, whereas walking would constitute only 5%, and then public transport, 7%. It changes slightly when people travel to school or colleges. 43%, slightly lower amounts, would travel by car or be a passenger in the car, and 23% use public transport and 25% use walking. So the numbers of public transport and active travel increase slightly. The commuting patterns within the county are 36% of people travel within the county, and outside the county, people would travel, and 44% of people would travel outside the county. So looking at the connection or the connectivity between the settlements, we looked at local centres, county towns, regional centres. And listed here are all the settlements in County Meath. So that some of them are connected with other towns or with other local centres. So just taking this for example, like say Oldcastle, it just has no connectivity. You know, it has gaps in the grey are gaps between the connectivity. So there'll be no connectivity to the town or to the regional centre or city. Say for Carlinstown, there is no connections between Carlinstown and a local centre, a county town, or a regional centre or a city. Where other places like say Enfield would have connections to a county town and a regional centre. So it was basically trying to find the gaps of who didn't have connections, and they were the ones that we tried to work on. We tried to look at non-conventional measures, such as the expansion of the existing demand responsive transport services provided by Localink. These would be Localink would provide scheduled services and also services that would be responded to because of the demand, the local demand. Also looking at piloting new approaches to increasing integration of non-emergency HSE services to hospital appointments with Localink services. The complementary measures that the just need to travel is basically looking at how the land is used and how the transport is planned around that, and bringing services to people rather than the people to the services, and providing technology hubs are also things that need to be considered. So what's the plan now? The public consultation for Connecting Ireland was completed in December 2021. Just recently, we received 3,000 submissions. A report of the findings is being produced presently, and phase 1 of the implementation plan should occur in the next few months. It's a 5-year plan, and the aim of it is to ensure frequency of public transport services, and that it covers all the area that it needs to cover. So the other development, transport development that's going on is Bus Connects, which is starting in Dublin. So the good news is that there has been an increase in public transport use from 2012 to 2019. We started in 2012 at 210 million of public transport journeys up to 290 million public transport journeys, which is good news. But unfortunately, there was 18% between 2014 and 2016 of traffic on the M50. And also on the journey time between the M1 and the M3 tripled between 2010 and 2016. So although public transport use is increasing, congestion is also increasing as well. So we need to look at some other alternatives. So looking at Dublin, tackling the region's congestion means focusing on the bus system in Dublin as it has a low density layout. Just looking at the picture here on the right, as you can see, there's a bus there which could maybe take 70 to 80 people, and if people there, and that's the amount of space taken over if those people travel on the bus compared to the amount of cars needed by those people travel by car. And also in this lower picture here, the amount of room on, say, a regional road by 80 cars versus by one bus. So Bus Connects plans hope to plan that journeys by bus will be fast, reliable, punctual, convenient, and affordable in order for people to travel on them. They're trying to plan more people to travel by bus than ever before, and they want bus commuting to become an attractive choice for employees, students, shoppers, and visitors to the country, or else people won't use it. So Bus Connects isn't just redesigning the network of the bus, it's also looking at the core bus corridor, which is basically making sure there's bus lanes for buses to travel without traffic, that there's cycle facilities, and that there's improved pedestrian facilities along these core bus corridors. Another is for the STAR ticketing system, which is being looked at now for tender. A simpler fare structure, which has happened on the Leap card, where you can take a few journeys in the Greater Dublin area on the Leap card for €2 presently. There is also looking at cashless payment system, which will be developed coming down the line. Park and ride facilities, new bus delivery to provide for new buses on these Bus Connect services, new bus stops and shelters, and also the use of low, zero and emission vehicles. Key concepts of Bus Connects is just say that's a representation, but presently all the buses come in from the suburbs into the city centre and get logged in there and then go back out. The concept of Bus Connects is that come from suburbs into the city, a lot would go out through the other side. There'd be more frequent, more streamlined services, but there's also an orbital route that connects these lines around the city, so you can come in on one, go on the O route and go to another is fine. It's also to have a greater capacity on the services, and that longer service hours, that they operate for longer at night time and at weekends, because people work patterns and social patterns are changing. This is just a rough map of the core bus corridor network. Shows here 12 core bus corridors. So those are the routes coming into the centre with improved cycling facilities, bus facilities, pedestrian facilities. Just to show you a representation of core bus corridor. The idea here is a footpath and a segregated, a separate cycle track at a lower level, and then a bus lane again at a lower level, a traffic lane, so that everyone has their own path of travel in a safe way. Park and ride will be added along the rail station. Park and ride sites to allow people to drive to a certain amount and allow public transport to come into the city. A number of potential locations have been identified along the key road routes, and more locations will be added. Will be looked at with the new bus network review to basically make sure that it's efficient. So bus and rail sites will be used for this. As I mentioned earlier, there's new fleet, so 280 hybrid double-deck buses were bought last year. On these, they have the green and yellow with the outdoor. There's a ramp at the front door, a backup ramp at the second door. There's priority seat inside, which is for in a different colour, just to ensure people who don't need them don't sit on them. And then there's the visitor space with the up seat, and there's an induction loop and extra passenger screens on the bus as well. Part of the climate action plan, there's a need to provide for low and zero emission vehicles, so we intend to change the fleet. The 280 electric hybrid double-deck buses were delivered to Dublin and Galway. We also purchased fully electric single-deck and double-deck fleet is underway. We trialled 3 hydrogen-fueled double-deck buses in 2021, and it's planned to develop a fully urban electric fleet by 2035. So as this represents here, it's in Dublin, the fleet of 2021 was mostly diesel. 2025 is hopefully to have some hybrid and some zero emission. So the plan is by 2035 is to have all zero emission vehicles. As well as that, we're hoping to upgrade the bus stop infrastructure. So at each bus stops now, there's 12,000 around Ireland. They've all got, there's varying poles, some would have some timetables, some would not. Some might be updated timetable information, some would be old. So a new style of transport file to expose being installed at the bus stops with timetable, which is pertinent to that stop. Additional bus shelters are hoped to be provided, particularly at key interchange locations with bus stop. So Bus Connect's the next step. I think that was for Dublin, which has got planning permission presently for both Planola. So hopefully after that, it will start to go ahead. So after that, then we hope to go to Cork, Galway, Wexford, Limerick, which is part of the National Development Plan framework that's set out. So as I say, it's in public consultation in Cork presently. So now just to give you a quick overview about the existing public transport improvements. At rail stations, there's 144 rail stations on the rail network, and new footbridges and lifts were installed at 3 of these rail stations in 2021. There's a photo of a new footbridge and lift where there was no access across to the other side of the tracks. Carlow, Edgeworthstown and Ennis, the cost of Ennis is approximately 1.8 million. The Dalkey and Gormastown lift and footbridge installation started last year. 15 of them have had internal and external accessibility audits completed, and works on that will be planned over the coming years to try and improve those. There was lift replacement funding of 18 million given to cover the years from 2020 to 2023. There's 125 lifts on the rail network in total, which all have a shelf life. 36 lifts have been replaced or renovated since 2020. And, you know, a lot of them are badly needed and overdue. 12 more planned for this year. A lot of the problems that we would have would be or Irish Rail would have would be the lift to call system for vandalism has been installed because there has been so many problems with vandalisms. So 37 stations have been completed to date, and it's basically where you press a button and it goes to a control center and a video camera to show that you're a genuine user of the lift and the lift is released. So it's planned to do all the stations at some stage. In the South Dart line, there was a reduction of 60% lift outages per year due to the effects of vandalism, down to 131 lift outages. The Luas a similar solution for their lifts and talking to Irish Rail on it. Again, at the rail, audio-visual announcements upgrade on the Dart is ongoing because it needs to be upgraded, and there was a lot of not working audio and visual announcements on their services. Signage improvements for wayfinding within the stations and just information within the stations. These have been installed at 47 stations since 2020. They had input from their disability use group. Irish Rail plan to hope to complete the 145 stations in total, pending funding. The NTA plan to implement the same type of wayfinding and signage in the stations also. For the bus stations, there are 25 bus errand locations that have been identified to install accessible bus bays for coaches and other external accessibility works improvements. So 18 locations have been completed to date, and others are in design phase, which should be completed over the next couple of years. So just to make the transition from getting off the bus and on the bus into the station more accessible. Accessibility audits were carried out in 18 of Bus Éireann bus stations, where they looked at wayfinding and signage, lack of information, installation of shelters, dog relief areas, changing place facilities. So they've put together a list of priority works and have submitted applications for funding for this year to get started. Some need planning permission, so it's going to take a few years to roll it out. With regard to bus stops, there was an audit carried out of over 12,000 bus stops by the NTA, and on it we were able to put a universal design rating on each bus stop. We worked with the National Disability Authority, so it's not just for wheelchair accessibility and if there's a dish carb to get up, but it's also timetable information. Is there a seat? Is there a shelter? We hope to include the information on the new National Journey Planner app, so people know before they go to a bus stop if they can access it or not. Unfortunately, every bus stop has a room to put a shelter, and a lot of people don't like shelters outside their houses, and planning permission is required for every shelter. So seats are beneficial to people. So we're carrying out a pilot of installing seats at bus stops. The area there is local authority land, so we're asking Dublin City Council and Wicklow County Council to pilot of some of their new bus stops, certain type of seats, and we'll ask for feedback on the seats. Irish Rail are also installing more seats for resting areas at their stations internally also, and they showed their seats to their disability use group. For rural transport, Local Link, 90% of the passenger journey trips are wheelchair accessible, and any new licences are wheelchair accessible where possible. Scheduled services are provided for, which are timetable, but as I said before, there's also demand responsive services for the customer to request, and we're working with the HSE on a pilot in Leitrim to try and integrate the services with the HSE services. The amount of wheelchair accessible taxis have increased, so from 4% up to 17%. All new licences are to be wheelchair accessible, so it's hoped in time this will increase further. But there is a regional urban divide, so there's more in the cities than in the counties of these type of vehicles. Commercial licences or private licences, the number of wheelchair accessible private fleet is 18%. So we're really hoping to improve on that figure, and we hope when COVID, the economy's opening up again, that we can engage with the private commercial bus operators on this again. So customer services, I think one thing that we would like to improve and work on is pre-journey information for people on their journey, especially for people travelling, visitors to the country, to know what type of service they can travel on before they get here. It reduces anxiety, to know the layout and facilities at the station. What type of payment is their easy payment? How much is their fare? What type of fleet will be on that route? And also we're trying to engage to have social stories for people with autism, taking journeys, working with a user group on that. The campaigns we have going on was Just a Minute card, which is the Jam card, which we launched there in November. It's just for people who have communication difficulties to be able to show the card to a driver, or a customer service agent to say, I just need a minute to count up my money or gather my thoughts. One campaign we're starting next month is Please Offer Me a Seat. This is more directed for people with hidden disabilities who may find difficulty standing on a bus for the journey and mightn't look as if they should get a priority seating, but maybe they've arthritis or fibromyalgia or something like that. So we're working with people with invisible disabilities on that presently. We have mystery shoppers on all the public transport services. So we reviewed the questions on it, and it includes, was the driver nice to me, polite? Did they wait till I was in my seat before the bus pulled off? Did they use the ramp? But the audio visuals working? So they are in our normal mystery shopper service anyway, which are carried out around quarterly and fed back to the transport operators. But we're starting mystery shopping surveys carried out by people with disabilities and the elderly, and just to get their feedback on more personal journeys. So we hope to carry them out maybe April and again in October. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Naomi. And as you can see, a huge array of work going across the NTA. And as I said, Age Friendly Ireland are delighted to be working so closely with the NTA in terms of how we embed the age-friendly principles. And as you can see from that, the age friendliness is not exclusive to older people. It covers a diverse range of ages and abilities and making sure that everybody has access to all the different services. So, Naomi, we look forward to having the question and answers and teasing some of that out a bit, and I suppose how the Age Friendly Programme and the Voice of Older People has been able to inform that process, so which is great. So our next presentation is from Miriam McKenna, who is the Transport Manager of the Meath Accessible Transport, more colloquially known as FlexiBus or nationally as the Local Link service. So Miriam has been working from 2003 in the context of FlexiBus, which now expands to Louth and Fingal. On top of that, though, she has been, I suppose, an international representative at many conferences in terms of what we're doing here in Ireland, but has also garnered a lot of experience from different models in America, New York, different places across the world, to build what she sees as a very, very robust service here locally. FlexiBus is a fleet-owned company, but on top of that as well, it's also a social enterprise. So Miriam, through her work, is also bringing labour activation to over 60 people in the local community, which is absolutely phenomenal and is very, very cost effective. So again, like that, it's not exclusive to older people. While older people are a huge number of passengers on her journeys, it also extends to students and younger family members, and it's a truly, really age-friendly service. So Miriam, looking forward to hearing your presentation and to the Q&A session. So welcome, Miriam.
Thank you very much. If you can bring me shopping, why can't you bring me to a hospital appointment? That's what a passenger said to me in 2006. Or how about this line? Just because there's no car outside the door doesn't mean I don't want to go anywhere. These two lines and similar ones direct, inform and prioritise how our services developed over the years. And I'd like to share some of our story with you over the next few minutes. Hello, I'm Miriam McKenna, and I'm the manager of FlexiBus Local Link, Louth, Meath and Fingal. We are one of the transportation coordination units under the National Transport Authority, and we deliver rural transport services in Louth, Meath and Fingal. Rural service started in 2001 with a number of companies setting up services in their area. Services were supported by government grants. A value for money review taken in 2011 by Fitzpatrick's Associates for the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport brought changes and new thinking about rural transport. Subsequently, the programme brought dedicated funding in 2012 when we moved to the National Transport Authority. Transport for Ireland Local Link is the name of rural transport companies throughout Ireland. There are 15 transport coordination units covering 1, 2 or 3 counties. We are funded by the National Transport Authority to provide rural transport. Services are regular public services and community services. All public services are procured with private operators, but 3 companies have their own vehicles to support community services and respond to community needs. FlexiBus Meath Accessible Transport was founded in 2001, following a successful application to government for funding for rural transport. We are a transport coordination unit, a social enterprise, a community transport provider and a training hub. In 2001, there was no policy for accessible vehicles, no policy for door-to-door services. There were only a few local and national projects providing similar services, and no one was aware of the need that was in the community, except the people that really needed it. In 2004, through Irish Rural Link and funded by Atlantic Philanthropies, I had the opportunity to visit a non-profit transportation project in the USA called ITN America. This was designed specifically for seniors and was based in Portland, Maine. This visit gave us the vision of what rural transport in Ireland could become. Cathy Freund, founder of ITN America, always spoke about 4 cornerstones. Each of these corners are interchangeable and interdependent. We invested in accessible vehicles to respond to the transport need of our passengers. Every vehicle was accessible and suitable for all passengers and all services. Drivers for our services were needed. So, working with government activation programs, we started to bring people into the company and train them as drivers and helpers on services. People who were recipients from the Exchequer suddenly became contributors, not only to the Exchequer, but to their family, their friends and their community. This practice is still our policy today. Our passengers are keystone to everything that we do. Passengers identify the services needed and we respond to their needs. There is no lack of demand for service. Funding was available initially on a year-to-year basis and is now multi-annual. We also undertook contracts to support community service and for the purchase of vehicles. Over the years, as our staff increased, we recognised the need to invest in our staff with skills that were transferable to other jobs and employers. We document how best practice in health and safety for passengers, drivers and vehicle safety, and introduced a full training programme for our staff. These are our health and safety policies. We created a programme for our volunteers and for our self-drive programme. We are a training centre for driver CPC under the Road Safety Authority. When is transport more than transport? INTELS did a study on rural transport in 2007. It was called Mobility and Quality of Life for Older People in Ireland. They explored the role of transport in people's lives and the variety of everyday social, health, economic and other activities which transport enables. Rural bus services directly link people to local towns, health appointments and community activities. But indirectly, the sense of mobility, autonomy and independence creates a sense of well-being and has positive health outcomes for individuals. A quote from the Connection study. Independence is a prime motive for using the bus. The bus supports independence because it addresses necessities while making them appear as choices. That needs thinking about. In 2009, we worked with an NGO called Include to create a custom-built system for our service scheduling using Salesforce technology. Together, we built the system which enabled us to manage our diverse range of services and introduced smartphone technology for drivers on every service. Today, we link with the Integrated Transport Management Systems, mouthful, ITMS, used by the NTA using phone technology. One day I had a phone call from Greta, mentioned her earlier. You can take me shopping, so why can't you take me to my hospital appointment? From this one request, our hospital services started. Today we have daily service to Dublin for hospital appointments from Fingal and Meath. And we have responsive services from Louth, Meath and Fingal to Dundalk, Drogheda, Navan and Cavan hospitals. And we link with other hospital services in the area. In 2013, I had an invitation from the Ageing Well Network, and this was an important milestone. This was an opportunity to see how government departments interacted with NGOs and other bodies. It gave Flexibus permission to start thinking as a social enterprise, to have so many like-minded people who were both interested and focused on service for older people. The possibilities of what we were doing and what we could do were tremendous. We finally found a home where we fitted. We never had permission to provide the array of services we offered. Here we found access to government personnel who listened to what we had to say. We all wanted the same thing, each with their own focus. At the end of the day, policy matters. And this is where policies were discussed, argued and agreed. The scope of individuals, the insights and learning at that time were transformational and led us to the breadth of services that we have today. The Ageing Well Network is now Age Friendly Ireland, and I look at the achievements of Age Friendly Ireland today and I'm amazed at their dedication and their confidence to continue to push for and to deliver the variety of services we know are needed. Owning our own vehicles gives us autonomy to respond to service needs immediately. All our services grew organically. If there was a need, we tried to figure out how to meet that need, either internally or externally. We have volunteer drivers who bring people to hospitals. Without their help and support, we would not be able to bring everyone to their appointments. Our volunteer scheme came about when a member of staff got cancer and needed to go to a hospital. We didn't have the capacity, so some of our staff members decided to help him on their days off. Then we started looking for volunteers. At the beginning of the scheme, we applied for funding to Meath Vocational Educational Committee, and this allowed us to put a programme in place to train and Garda vet our volunteers. It has been running since 2010, and we have transported thousands of passengers. Once people know of a service, the need for it grows. We made contact with a volunteer service in 2015 and found volunteers who were willing to drive. We put best practice in place, and then we made policy. We have on average 3 volunteers out daily, and this is in addition to our current hospital services. The volunteers provide a wonderful service for our passengers. We started our celebration day for our passengers 10 years ago in Navan Shopping Centre to thank them for all their support. We invited local agencies to set up stands and explain their services. The community Gardaí attend, and we invite our local councillors and our public representatives. When we expanded into Louth, Meath and Fingal, we moved venue to accommodate the high number of passengers. We have music and dancing and a game of bingo. There's always a goodie bag and lots of prizes. We have invited speakers over the year. Minister Mary O'Rourke, who was the first minister to introduce rural transport, has been one of our speakers. We've also had Tánaiste Leo of Radker, we have Éanna Ní Lamhna, Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh and Anna May McHugh among our speakers.
To think the little baby that I was born in about February, March of 2002, this is the baby that was born then, which was a demure little infant, and look at it now. Little did I ever imagine that it would do all that you're doing, and that hundreds and hundreds of people can every week get accessible, both able-bodied and those maybe some not in the best of health, can get their transport to where they want to go. And you like the Alice in Wonderland, you just grew, and there was no stop to you. And here you are. I'm flabbergasted.
In 2019, we had to cap our numbers at 500. All our staff, our board members and volunteers from local schools were on hand to help with lunch and tea and give out the prizes. We conduct a survey on that day to get ideas and new ideas for transport services. The pandemic brought a halt to our celebration day. Hopefully we'll have another day soon. Our board of directors have always been front and centre and the driving force for everything that we have done. From community representatives, disability activists, agencies and local authorities. The diverse range of talents on our board have encouraged diversification, organic growth, thinking outside the box. Their identification and vision of accessibility and transport for all underpinned everything we did, we planned and we do currently. Their determination to highlight the advantages of accessible rural transport continue to this day. They pioneer and encourage, and never take half answers. They stand up and ask questions of our local authorities, our government and their departments, and hold them accountable for their actions, inactions, activities and policies. We are very lucky with the support and confidence of our local authorities in Louth, Meath and Fingal. Each local authority is represented on the board, and I sit on the age-friendly committee in each county and work closely with the staff and the older people's councils. We work to ensure transport services to those who need it most and highlight transport issues that arise. This relationship works because we are interdependent on each other. Throughout the pandemic, under Community Call Forum, Rural Transport worked together with other NGOs and agencies to ensure support for older people. In 2019, we had a community volunteer project in Skerries, supported by Fingal Local Authority. We had 1 electric car, loaned by GoCar. We had 19 volunteer drivers and plenty of passengers for short trips to connect with the bus, with the train, with health appointments or with our local community. This was low cost and this was easily managed, and it just disappeared in the pandemic. However, the success of this pilot project gives a vision of what we could achieve working together using electric vehicles. Climate change means changes in transport. One bus can remove 10 or 20 or 40 cars from the roads, whether going to work, going to school or attending local community activities. The opportunity is there to reduce our carbon footprint. Issues for consideration. Rural transport is a postcode lottery. Depending on where you live will depend on the level of service that you have. The real value of what we do is not just managing transport services, but in providing local transport and reacting to local community needs. We know what we need to do. Government knows the value of what we do. The National Transport Authority are providers of public transport, but not all our services fit into the national structure. Why fit in when you were designed to stand out? Working under the National Transport Authority brought an expansion to Louth, Meath and Fingal, and as each county has its own challenges, so we continue to look for solutions. We have had increased investment in transport throughout the county, and services have increased significantly. Policy to practice, or practice to policy. Changing policy is hard work, and changing mindsets is difficult. Trying to get funding is challenging. Rural communities are challenged every day. Creating policy for community transport is how FlexiBus Local Link Louth, Meath, Fingal is challenged. Back in 2001, accessible transport was only a notion. Not many taxis, minibuses or coaches were accessible. By asking, telling, informing, knocking on doors, showcasing issues of passengers, by creating a more inclusive society, our practice became policy. Best practiced with efficient outcomes should become policy. When we started talking about best practice, funders constantly asked us to fit in with what was there. But the thinking of the board is, why fit in when we were designed to stand out? Our best practice of training drivers in terms of disability awareness and accessibility is now the policy for any transport company taking up a contract with the Rural Transport Local Link umbrella. Policy follows practice. By speaking to politicians and community representatives and showing our best practice, it has enabled policymakers to make policy. Our services and our vehicles must continue to support our older people and be funded to do so. Rural Transport Local Link brand is now widely accepted as the main transport support for rural Ireland. Our community accessible vehicles can be used in the community, by the community and for the community, and we must be funded to do so. As I said earlier, it has often been said, just because there isn't a car outside the house, that doesn't mean they don't have anywhere to go. For years we had a population living in rural Ireland that had a bus pass, but no bus ever passed their door. Rural transport encourages the inclusion of older people living in rural Ireland and gives them the opportunity to live independently. Transport, or lack of transport, impacts on health, well-being, social inclusion, social capital, social activities. We must empower people to be more independent. We must encourage people to get more involved with their communities and stay involved and connected. And we must enable people to remain in their homes longer. Why fit in when you were designed to stand out? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Miriam. As I said, another fabulous overview of how the local transport company can really provide that interconnectivity. And I suppose what was really striking is the overview of the other dividends, the volunteers, the participation, the reduction in social isolation. All of these can be critically attained by the rollout of a local link service such as Miriam. And I suppose we'll discuss more in the Q&A, Miriam, about the role of the transport coordination and I suppose really delivering to the overall health and wellbeing outcomes of the ageing population, because that's exactly what a transport service can do. So really looking forward to the Q&A session. Another element of transportation, and it's funny, when we started, as I said, with the consultation with older people over 12 years ago, was such a diverse range of things that came forward. Under the World Health Organization checklist, you will see things like air travel, you will see about the built environment, roads, infrastructure, transportation, public service, driving your own car, insurance costs, licensing, regulation. It's a very, very diverse role. But I suppose what was really came through from people was about, I suppose, the connectivity to that, and even getting to their age-friendly airport, getting to an airport, getting to that, being able to access the online system, being able to book travel. And I suppose as that emerged, we have looked at a number of different infrastructural projects, such as age-friendly train stations, and we'll talk about that, Naomi, as well, because we know we're going through that process and there's been huge capital investment into that. But also all our other age-friendly public realm works, pedestrian crossings, traffic lights, parking, bus routes, bus shelters. But one interesting one was the airport, because in the west of Ireland we have two airports. which are, I suppose, heavily accessed by the ageing population by virtue of their location, their proximity to the west. But it was a unique opportunity, I suppose, speaking to the area that Naomi is passionate about coming in at design stage and looking at some of the new elements when they were actually creating and putting in some capital investment. So there was a significant process went through, and I know later this year we're going to launch the airports as the first age-friendly airports, which is very, very exciting. But it was an innovative way to look at how older people, and by virtue of that, the general population, can access air travel. So today we're going to hear from Karen Fennessy, who is the Age-Friendly Programme Manager in Clare County Council. And as a result of that role, I suppose, like Maura, Karen's role will span the community call service, the Age-Friendly Alliance, rural and community development, other areas of the community section, which is a wide-ranging role in each of the local authorities, listening to the voice of older people through the OPC, working with the Public Participation Network. So both of your roles, and Maura, I know you have a technical background as well, which really brought a very good perspective to this process. So it's been a delight to work with you both through this, and really looking forward to your presentation.
Hello, my name is Anne Rizzo and I'm International Relations Officer with Age Friendly Ireland. My colleagues and I are going to speak with you today about a new transport initiative that has just reached completion. Age Friendly Airport International Guidelines was a joint venture between two airports located on the west coast of Ireland that is known internationally as the Wild Atlantic Way. Age Friendly Ireland is a shared service embedded in local government. This service provides support and guidance to all 31 local authorities across Ireland in developing their age-friendly programmes. The Irish programme was originally funded from philanthropic sources, and when funding for this work ended in 2016, Meath County Council offered to host the age-friendly programme on an interim basis in order to ensure that the continuity of this very valuable work. And then later, they won the bid to host the government-funded shared service for age-friendly work in Ireland. Since the rollout of the first age-friendly programme in Ireland in 2009, cities and rural communities across Ireland are working to create an environment where older people are at the heart of service delivery and the design of the spaces that people of all ages use. As we age and our populations across the world become older, putting an age-friendly ethos at the core of how services are delivered is key for international bodies, governments, and communities everywhere. Many older people use their later years for extensive travel, but often feel discouraged by the barriers presented at airports. Many airports of different sizes already have most of the attributes required to be age-friendly. Some airports may, however, need to address existing legacy developments to become more age-friendly. It is that commitment over time to become age-friendly that is of the greatest importance. So what is an age-friendly airport?
So an age-friendly airport is an airport, regardless of its size, with an inclusive and accessible environment that optimises opportunities for people of all ages, but especially older people, to allow older people to be able to travel in comfort with the security that they will be treated with dignity and respect. An age-friendly airport is designed or can be reconfigured over time to anticipate and respond flexibly to ageing-related needs and preferences. It strives to protect those who are most vulnerable and promotes older people's inclusion in and contribution to all areas of airport activities. So therefore, an age-friendly airport will be designed over time and in line with national regulation and commercial capacity to universal design standards, and will have some of the following: some public seating with armrests throughout the airport, ideally every 100 metres apart, adequate number of accessible toilets, pedestrian lights with longer green person time, clear signage for displaying airport arrivals and departure information, bus stops with shelter and seats and contact communication points, appropriate lighting throughout the airport and on signage, appropriately designed footpaths, curbs, surfaces and parking. Other features that are highlighted by the airport management will be in consultation with their older persons clients. In instances where these features are not all currently present, their provision can be phased in over time or clearly committed in the forward planning programme of the airport.
The Age-Friendly Airport project was born from outcomes of the consultation process for the Clare and Limerick age-friendly strategies back in 2015-2016. Consultation with our older citizens identified the importance of our transport links internationally, nationally and locally. Older people in both counties wanted to see an age-friendly initiative carried out in Shannon Airport, which serves the Midwest region, to allow for improved accessibility and ease of travel for its older passengers. Various recommendations for improvements at the two airports were highlighted by older people as part of the strategy consultation based on their own experiences of using the airports. Following a discussion with Age Friendly Ireland around the concept, the Mayo Age Friendly Programme Manager expressed an interest in developing Island West Knock Airport as age-friendly in addition to Shannon Airport. The addition of Knock Airport to the project was very much welcomed, as the project now had the potential to position the west of Ireland as an age-friendly destination for travellers and link the two airports together through the Wild Atlantic Way tourism initiative. It must be acknowledged that at the outset of the project, there was huge support provided by Age Friendly Ireland, the chief executives of the Clare, Limerick and Mayo County Councils, and airport management in both Shannon and Knock airports. A consultant was engaged by Age Friendly Ireland to develop guidelines for an age-friendly airport that would be presented to the World Health Organization. The consultant met with the wider older people's councils in all three counties for their input. There was also input given by the Commissioner for Aviation Regulation, Cathy Mannion, as well as the airport management of Shannon and Knock airports.
Limerick City and County Council has committed to supporting Shannon Airport in its drive to enhance the experience of older people who travel through the airport, and supports the role of the Limerick-Shannon metropolitan area as a major growth engine of the Midwest region and main international entry to the Atlantic corridor for both tourism and business sectors. The acknowledgement of Shannon as an age-friendly airport complements the great variety of age-friendly initiatives already undertaken in the Clare-Limerick region. In collaboration with our partners at Shannon Airport and Clare and Mayo County Councils, we are committed to the provision of high-quality, fully accessible travel experiences that links Shannon Airport to local urban centres and improves the ability of older people to use Shannon Airport as a main departure arrival point.
The key objective of Mayo County Council is to help build a county which we describe as sustainable, inclusive, prosperous and proud. We strive to make Mayo an age-friendly county which values and cares for all of its citizens equally. In that regard, a central feature of this commitment is to advance all facets of public realm towards universal design, as well as embedding an age-friendly ethos as set out in the National Positive Ageing Plan. The process of Ireland West Airport Knock becoming an age-friendly airport began in 2018, and with Shannon Airport will be the first airports in the world to have such recognition. This initiative is the result of a long-term collaboration between Mayo County Council and our partners in Ireland West Airport. We are absolutely delighted to have achieved national recognition for our work towards creating a more age-friendly environment at the airport, and in doing so, developing guidelines that can be used by any airport across the globe.
We always work with all our airport community to provide an excellent customer service. We have a very dedicated workforce committed to providing the best-in-class customer service to all passengers. In recent years, we've installed a sensory room. This is part of our programme to assist passengers who have special needs, particularly autism. And we have a programme that will highlight passengers. They will give them a little orange wristband and a baseball cap. And these passengers then all airport staff are trained to recognise passengers who are wearing this gear and to give them extra assistance. They then will bring them to the sensory room, which is located in our transit area, that in our departures lounge. That room is a very quiet, calming space that people can go in, that can use it just to wait there while they're waiting for their flight without all the noise of a normal airport terminal.
Over the past 2 years, the airport has been working to transform the airport experience for our customers through the enhancement of our service and facilities, and throughout the process have worked in collaboration with the teams at Age Friendly Ireland, Mayo County Council to ensure the transformation works and service offering met with the requirements of the Age Friendly recognition programme.
So as part of the Age Friendly initiative rolled out by the airport, when passengers arrive into the terminal building, there's a dedicated PRM meeting point just beside our customer service desk. If they arrive and wait there, our customer service team will come over, meet the passenger and escort them all the way through the airport journey. So they'll bring them through security, help them with their bags, bring them through departures where there's a dedicated seating area, which again was developed in partnership with Age Friendly Ireland. They wait there for their flight in that dedicated areas. Then our customer service team will escort them out to the steps of the aircraft, help them board the aircraft, and they're on the way into their holiday in the UK or Europe. So another initiative which again was rolled out in consultation with the teams at Mayo County Council and Age Friendly Ireland, and I suppose it's an initiative that's been in place here at the airport for many years, is when the passengers are escorted out to the aircraft by our staff, we have an ambi-lift, so it's a dedicated lift for passengers to get on. So just to avoid having to use the steps of the aircraft, because obviously some may not be able to walk up the steps, we will bring them over to a dedicated, it's like an ambulance lift that will bring the passengers up to the aircraft and bring them to their seats. So that's again another fantastic offering that we have here at the airport. So one of the action points raised as part of the walkability audit that we carried out with Mayo County Council and Age Friendly Ireland was additional seating in the main terminal for passengers as they arrive to the airport, that they can sit down and wait. Sometimes they might arrive a bit earlier, or there might be meeting and greeting passengers off aircraft. So we introduced in the region of about 100 extra seats all across the terminal building, just to make the experience for elderly passengers, make the environment more comfortable for them as they're waiting for their loved ones are waiting before they check in for the flight. So we introduced, as I said, about 100 new seats in the arrivals area, departures, all around the main terminal, all to just improve the experience for passengers as they go through the airport. So the airport in 2017 embarked on a major airport transformation programme with the aim of improving the facilities here in the airport, enhancing the customer experience for passengers as they fly through the airport. And as part of that, as part of our desire to be recognised as a more age-friendly airport, one of the action points and one of the learning points, I suppose, we took from working with the guys was our toilet facilities here at the airport. The entrances and the toilets themselves weren't wide enough to cater for the varying types of passengers we have. So we carried out a major upgrade of our toilets across the airport campus. So from our departures, in our arrivals hall, in our main terminal, we widened all the entrances and made bigger and more accessible toilets for passengers passing through the airport. And again, all developed with the aim of improving the customer experience for passengers as they go through the airport.
So a walkability audit refers to how welcoming an area is for people of all abilities to access their way around. In the context of age-friendly design, it refers to the ease at which older people can move around an area, building or space. A walkability study is an audit carried out to rate a building on how easy it is to move around. Walkability audits were carried out at both Knock and Shannon airports, and members of the Older Persons Council of Clare and Mayo took part in these audits, along with people of other various mobility issues. So the areas in both airports that were audited were the outdoor environment, the entrance, the check-in desks, the information desks, security, transit lounges, boarding gates, the baggage hall and arrivals. Based on this walkability audit, a report was drawn up with recommendations by all the participants for both Shannon and Knock airports, and included comments gathered from the participants on the day. As part of this now, we're going to hear from some of those participants, followed by a few words from Mr. Pat Dowling, who is National Chair of the Age Friendly Alliance and Chief Executive of Clare County Council.
I think the signage has been greatly improved from when I was last here. It's very bright and big, and you can see it easily, especially if you're somebody like me who doesn't wear glasses all the time. Lovely friendly greeting from the security personnel, which is far from usually being the case at airports, and help to lift your luggage if you needed it. I found that particularly helpful. And the other thing was now that you don't have to fuss anymore about that little horrible plastic bag with all your liquids in it. And it just makes such a difference to your stress levels. So I really think they've improved that enormously. If only poor old Dublin could get some of that at the moment. One last thing I'd like to say, and it's really got nothing to do with being useful or anything, but just in a general sense, the aesthetics of the airport as you're moving through. There are some absolutely fantastic artefacts in the airport now that I, as a frequent traveller through Shannon, have not seen, certainly pre-COVID. Maybe I just hadn't noticed them. But I think the statue of the rugby players, the 2007 statue, is really a work of art. Beautiful panel beating or beating, whatever it is, to get the shape of the statues. And also the boat, the woven boat that's just outside the check-in area. And even the building itself, the extension to the building has beautiful wood and metal being used to open it up and bring light into the building. So the whole building is full of light, and I think that makes a huge difference as well. There's nothing claustrophobic about it.
Well, I just think it's more spacious and it's well clean, and you feel that you can sit down comfortably and wait, and if your flight's delayed, you've no problem at all. The service is good, excellent. Well, I haven't flown since lockdown. I've not used the airport since then, but I did regularly to fly into the UK or abroad, and that, and found it absolutely fantastic. Now to what it was, where you used to get wet walking to the plane if it was raining. Now that doesn't happen. It's really super, everything about it. It's 100% improvement. At Knock Airport, the staff, they're interested, as though they're giving you a service that, that's it. Whereas you go to into a shop at another airport, they don't do that. They just can't get you through quick enough. You don't get the impression that they're out to just make a lot of money out of you buying stuff at the airport.
Since we were here last, before the COVID restrictions, we identify, at that time it was of course very good at that stage, but we identified certain little things that we thought might improve it. One of those was the covered walkway from the plane, because at that time people, when they came off the plane, if the weather was inclement or whether it was or not, they had to walk to the open air. And since then they were able to put in sort of walkways and shelter from that, so that was one thing. The other thing that we pointed out was adequate toilets in the proper place and adequate signage for them, and that certainly was a noticeable improvement today. They certainly took that on board, and the signs are big enough now. Unless you were totally blind, you could hardly miss them. And again, they took on board what we wanted. The other thing, like at that time, there was little imperfections on the walkways, and that, a little tile here, it tripped here, and little that could trip somebody with impaired mobility. So I noticed they have actually corrected that as well. So our trip 2 years ago wasn't entirely wasted. Well, I think the security procedures were very good. They have very high-tech new scanning equipment, which certainly speeds up the thing and makes it a very painless process for people. There's seating everywhere. The seating is excellent. A lot of extra seating has gone in since we were here last, even in the shopping area, which you don't normally see seats in shops. That, I think, was something that was suggested the last day, and that is in place now.
Consultation is at the heart of Age Friendly Ireland's programme of work, and we place huge emphasis on listening to and enlisting the views of people impacted by our work. In the context of our age-friendly airports, this was never more important, and engagement with older people's councils and engagement with older people is very important to us. We apply what's called universal design, whereby if you design your activities and your projects for older people, then you design for everybody else. And I think that's at the core of our programme of work. We would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the assistance and cooperation of the management of both Shannon and Knock airports. They, in collaboration with Clare County Council, Limerick City and County Council and Mayo County Council, have achieved this very significant outcome in the designation of Knock and Shannon airports as age-friendly airports, as designated by the World Health Organization. We're very happy and proud of this achievement, and we now look forward to developing this further across other airports. And we also look forward to welcoming more people, particularly older people, to come and enjoy the west of Ireland in the years ahead.
Having promoted civic participation of older people in the design and implementation of the Age Friendly Airport initiative through consultation and walkability audits, we are now ready to promote the airport's retail environments by adopting an age-friendly business recognition scheme. We will also consider ways to grow opportunities of older people to use Knock and Shannon airports for international travel. We will work to make Shannon and Knock airports accessible for people of all ages and life stages. We will create opportunities for airlines to adopt age-friendly principles, particularly in relation to booking and accessing travel information. We will collaborate with key stakeholders to position counties Clare, Limerick and Mayo as leading age-friendly tourist destinations, and through our business recognition programme, we will support businesses in the region to recognise and harness the potential of older adults as a key market area. This process could not have reached its completion without the support and input of the many key stakeholders who participated. In particular, Age Friendly Ireland would like to acknowledge both Shannon and Knock Airport Authority managements, the Commissioner for Aviation Regulation in Ireland, Cathy Mannion, and the Chief Executives of the Clare, Limerick and Mayo County Councils for their unwavering support. Finally, and most importantly, we acknowledge the input of the older people who participated in the Shannon and Knock Airport walkability studies. Their time, dedication and commitment to the process was integral to Shannon and Knock airports being recognised by the World Health Organization as the first age-friendly airports in the world. We hope that from now on, people from around the world will consider travelling through Shannon Airport and Knock Airport to visit the beauty and hospitality we have on offer on the west coast of Ireland and the Wild Atlantic Way.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Karen and Maura, for your contribution. And I'd also like to thank our Regional Programme Manager, Anne Rizzo, with the Shared Service, who was previously the Age Friendly Programme Manager in Limerick, but now leads out on the coordination of the 8 counties in her region, but was a critical contributor to this. But Anne also is the International Relations Officer, so is the eyes and ears of Age Friendly with all our colleagues across the world. So if there's any specific queries in relation to the Age Friendly Airport, you can get in contact with Anne directly. So that wraps up our presentations for today. So I'm delighted now to go into our Q&A sessions. We've had a number of questions coming through on Slido, and keep sending them if you want to send them in before, and we'll do about 20 minutes now before we wrap up. So look at in advance of that, Naomi, I'm going to start with you. One of the questions is, can you tell us about the newly set up Transport Advisory Group and the involvement of older people? I know there was a call, an expression of interest and it was put out, and they know that there was a lot of a piece of process behind it. So my understanding now is that that group has been established, so just a little bit more information around that.
Sure, Catherine. The NTA thought it'd be very beneficial to have a transport user advisory group. Like all of the transport operators like Irish Rail, Bus Air, and they all have user groups that feed into the transport operators and how they do their services. So we decided to set up this group. We went out for expression of interest in December, and it's made up of 15 people to represent all users of public transport and active travel. So there will be cyclists, pedestrians, people representing elderly people, people representing people with disabilities, local link users, taxi users, business people, just everybody, to get their input into programs that the NTA are rolling out, because there's no point in us working in isolation. We need feedback from everybody. So we had our first meeting there on Friday, which is great, and we hope to have more meetings and get input and feedback for our programs going forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important in the context of diversity when we're talking about the shared space, because oftentimes you can have controversial issues when we want to have cycle lanes, we want to have road users, we want to have pedestrians, but most of all we want to promote safety as well as accessibility. So I think that's a fabulous idea where you're bringing everybody and gives them that opportunity to talk. And it's certainly something that has worked very, very well for the Age Friendly programme. If you actually go out and speak to people and ask them to come in and co-design. So I commend the NTA on that, Naomi, and I'll come back to you with other questions. Going to jump to the other side. Maura, just a question around the Age Friendly Airport, which was absolutely fabulous, the overview of it. And I know I've been delighted to be part of that, because I was actually just saying to Karen, I can't wait to start using Knock and Shannon myself, because it's so accessible. So tell us just a little bit, briefly describe the steps taken to carry out the walkability audit. I think that's very interesting, how people participated in that.
So the process involved inviting members of our OPC, our Older Persons Council, to carry out a walkability audit. We also included community members that would have had limited mobility, just to have a balance of mobility issues. So the group were divided into 4 teams, and they were assigned a leader. And the 4 teams then were brought to various areas of the airport and carried out an audit of the aesthetic value of the airport, the comfort of the airport, the ease of access around the airport. So then after that, the leader of each team would have gone through a checklist of questions, and they would have discussed the issues, if there was any issues raised, or the improvements that they would have recommended. And they had a session then with the staff of the airport with their experience of the walkability audit, and of which then a report of recommendations was drawn up. And after that, a follow-up action plan was developed for Knock Airport, and the staff of Knock Airport then were able to implement measures based on the recommendations in that plan.
That's true co-design. I mean, it really is, when you're getting everybody to come in and, everybody can put their ideas on the table. But then when you go to management and they can say, well, we can do this or we can do this, we can't do all of that. And I think that's really good, because it means people have a role in setting the priorities, particularly when there's limited budget. So I think that's a fantastic process, and really reflective of everything that has been done over the last 12 years. So Miriam, I'm going to jump to you now. A question just come in terms of COVID and the impact and reduced. But since, I suppose, the impact of COVID on your passengers, but since restrictions have been limited or have been lifted, how has that changed your passenger service? And maybe you might even tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you did during COVID as well.
Yeah, COVID had a big impact on our passengers. Our passengers dropped quite suddenly. And we found over those 2 years, even though we had gone out to visit people and brought out goodie bags and things, we found that people were really down in themselves and found it very difficult to see that there was going to be an end. So then last year we decided that we were going to try and do something. So the people that we normally speak to and we normally transport, we got an offer through the OPW to go and bring them over to the Battle of the Boyne, to Newgrange. We got another offer for Minalty Steam Thrashing Museum. And we started bringing them out in just groups of just 4 and 5. And they went out and went for the visit. And we also then, if they didn't want to go that far, then we also brought them to local restaurants and local hotels, just 4 or 5 people to go in and have a cup of coffee together, so that they could kind of catch up but yet be together. And I think it really helped. And so bringing people back into services now, we have to be considerate that they are still afraid, that there's still a reluctance to return to service, but the need to go out is still there. So it's really going to be a slow build, you know, to bring back the confidence to people that they know they can go out and that they're safe, but it will be slow.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, like through the older people's councils, as you know, we try to engage with every older person in Ireland, and we're definitely getting a mixed bag. We have some people who just cannot wait to get back out and, you know, have been in for so long, and while there might be some reticence, they're very, very happy to go out.
Yeah.
And then there are others that are just more careful and more anxious, particularly if they're immunocompromised. So I think striking that balance, you know, is very important. But I also know, Miriam, in lockdown, you know, you were hugely supportive in terms of deliveries and delivering things and bringing stuff to people. And I think that level of connectivity was very, very important.
Very important now, so that people trust in what we're doing, trust that our vehicles are safe, trust that our drivers are wearing their masks, and they continue to wear their masks.
Absolutely.
So it is very important to get people back on.
Absolutely.
So if you're out there, up on the bus, guys.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Thanks, Miriam. Karen, question for you. You're obviously Clare Age Friendly Programme Manager, coordinating the broader context and your alliance and so forth. So the impact of transport in other areas of your work outside of the airport, and I mentioned a raft of stuff. Maybe you could talk us through a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, that's a good question, really, because when we embarked on the airport project, I suppose one of the things that was in our mind was that we could then establish links to our age-friendly towns.
That's right.
So last year we had a big launch in Ennis, for Ennis, which is our capital town in County Clare, being an age-friendly town. And just to take it back a step, when we did consultation for the Age-Friendly Town project, one of the things that came out of that consultation was improved transportation links to Ennis, improved links to the airport, how we move around Ennis, cycle lanes, pedestrianisation within the town, and improved accessibility of the public realm, as well as other things that form an age-friendly town, like age-friendly parking spaces near to shops and services that older people use, and age-friendly seating. They put in some lovely little parklets, they call them, down the main street in O'Connell Street, and kind of created nice little social areas for people. And similar to what Miriam was saying about COVID and the impact of COVID within that town, those parklets kind of became a little outlet for people where they could meet outdoors and just kind of connect back with each other. But I have to say our rural transport as well in County Clare is very good, and the manager there sits on our Age Friendly Alliance. So it's about now connecting people rurally. The rural link transport service all connects into Ennis, and then we've an excellent bus air and bus service that connects from Ennis back to the airport.
Absolutely, and it really is about that connectivity, because we're the built environment, and obviously, Naomi, we work with the NDA to make suggestions how capital funding streams can be age-friendly and by virtue of that accessible by all. But I think it's very important. You can look at your bus stops and your tone zones and your pedestrian crossings and your footpaths, but those other support services are critical, like the route planning. So you can look at town services. We were talking about the integration into the HSE, coordinating with hospital appointments, making sure people don't miss them. It's all so important. And that's how the Age-Friendly Town process can bring it in, So across the domains of the WHO, in fact, they're all connected, so it's that's great, Karen. Thank you for that. Going to jump back to you, Naomi. We believe you have a mystery shopper survey. Can you tell us a little bit? I'm intrigued to hear more about this myself.
Well, I suppose, you need to hear feedback, good and bad, in order to improve a service or know where to improve it. So for all the transport operators, we already had mystery shopper surveys, that would go out and give good and bad on certain points on the transport operators under, without being known. And that would feed back to the NTA. But feedback from the elderly and people with disabilities was like, well, it's more than that. It's more than a tick box exercise.
Sure.
And so we felt it was important that they carried out the mystery shopper surveys themselves. So we're just in the process now. We have a group of people ranging from elderly to maybe have mobility impairments and who have agreed to take these on and hope to carry them out, the first set in May, and then hopefully move on from that and do another set further on the year. And we just hope to grow it a bit more. And it will cover Bus Éireann, Irish Rail, Go Ahead Services, Lewis, and Bus Éireann services around the country. So that's the plan, and looking forward to getting the feedback back and then working on improving the things we're missing, which a lot of times is to do with the feeling, the experience, feeling of safety, politeness of the driver, did they help, rather than just is the audio visual working, did they pull up to the curb, it's more than just that. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how it works.
And looking more about the experience
It's
rather than the outputs.
Yeah,
and I think
and
that's
the
very
feeling.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a chance for people to share that with us,
Yeah.
because if we don't know, we can't fix it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a wise man once told me about, people can tell you this is right, this is wrong or whatever, but nobody can tell you how you feel. So
Yeah.
if your experience of something is not good, it's really important that we're given a catalyst to feed that back. So
Yeah.
we'll hear more about that. We'll be doing a wrap up of where people can get more information. So we might just point people to that at the end. And Naomi, that'd be great. Maura, we covered quite a bit in the video, and I thought it was great to have the voice of not only our chief executives but our older people's council showcasing some of the stuff. But just a question in terms of what difference has it made for the older person travelling through Knock Airport, and I suppose by virtue of that Shannon Airport as well, but what have you heard back directly?
Well, I think one of the really positive outcomes of our walkability audit is that Knock Airport, and I'm sure Shannon as well, had a lot of good measures and practices in place before the walkability audit itself. They carried out the audit with much ease and comfort throughout the airport, so that was a huge positive feedback from it.
Some of the things I heard from Karen there, for example, was this new piece about not having to take your toiletries out, or that was very, very unique. And as you're saying, some things were there you can put some structure around, but some of them are quite obvious, the new things that come in,
Yeah, for example, in Knock, you have the personal reduced mobility service there, where you have the staff trained to assist people. You also have, Knock isn't a very congested airport, but when it does become crowded, the staff are there to assist for your priority boarding or your priority queuing. So one of the recommendations that did come out of our audit was that Knock and Shannon need to promote themselves more as, in terms of how user-friendly they are as an airport, So yeah, it was a very positive exercise for both airports,
I think that's really important, and myself and our regional programme manager, Anne, and one of our chief executives, Pat Darling, met with AARP, who are a partner of ours from the US, talking about the synergies and diaspora between the US and Ireland. But one key thing was the age friendliness of the two airports on the seaboard coming in, and that, it's just, we have so many passengers coming in, albeit that's reduced in the last 2 years. We will see that opening up again. So how timely is it that we have this in place? So that's really, really great. Miriam, back to you. Just a question around the community transport, and I mean your whole model and through the transport coordination units, but working alongside regular, public service obligation vehicles or public transport, how does that work? Or talk to us about it, or should it work better, or what needs to be done to make sure that that's integrated?
Yeah, community transport and regular public transport should be working very well together. And I think there's a great opportunity for that to happen. You get services that need to be integrated, and it also gives you an opportunity to look at funding that, okay, so the National Transport Authority is responsible for public transport, but there are also other services that can be put in that can be co-funded. Like I mentioned before, GoCar, which was a joint programme over in Fingal. We have another one here in Meath where we have a school where they had a high dropout rate and students weren't attending school. And so with the Education and Training Board and with the local authorities and another government department and the National Transport Authority, we were able to put a service in place, and it changed the whole dynamic of the school. Kids came to school on time, they were ready to go to school. And this bus, like, even though they're only it's only, say, a 10-minute journey, these kids were up at 7:20 in the morning to get the bus.
Wow.
So at the turnaround, it just goes to show how things can change. And then there's always lots of talk about the first mile and the last mile. So the first mile and the last mile is always the most difficult mile to cover. But with community transport, you see, you can fill that in. You can have feeder services, and you spoke about the where you can park your car, your park and rides, and that's the same idea. Your community transport can be the link between your park and ride and your mainline services, whether it's bus or whether it's train. So the opportunity is there to integrate both community transport and regular public transport together. It works for us. I think it's great.
But like even social enterprise, that model you're talking about, getting the children, the community transport, it's almost like a mentoring or coaching or supporting role to get the child to school. And then when that becomes stabilised, then they can gateway to regular public services and get themselves there. So there's a lovely link there between the two, that one can actually enable people
and the
to...
benefits.
Yes.
The benefits of the kids staying in school and getting through their 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
Incredible. And we will see it for years and years and years to come. It's been running for 6 years very successfully.
That's wonderful. I commend you on that, Miriam. That's a fantastic initiative. Coming back to you, Karen, just going to wrap it up shortly. And I think a lovely question for us to finish on. Why do you think it's important to have an age-friendly airport,
Well, I suppose we've a growing demographic of older people, but I mean, as Maura said in the video, an age-friendly airport, it's not just about providing for older people, it's actually about providing accessibility to all of the services that an airport provides to everybody. So young parents with buggies transporting little babies, people with disabilities, everybody should be able to use the airport. And certainly for us in the Midwest, and I'm sure the Northwest, we've quite a large catchment area that don't want to be trekking right over to Dublin to be able to use our airport services. And it's just been really great that we were able to get that buy-in from the two airport authorities, obviously the support of our own management in the local authorities, the Aviation Commissioner, as well as Age Friendly Ireland, to get this project over the line. And I suppose I was surprised to learn that these will be the two first age-friendly airports in the world.
Absolutely.
Because, you do visit other airports around the world that are perfectly accessible. They've just never really promoted it and branded it as such.
Went through the process, absolutely, and a lovely one to finish on, because, as you know, we just launched Croke Park as the first age-friendly stadium last Thursday. Such a milestone day, and the World Health Organization came over to acknowledge it as the first stadium that had went through the process. And the learning there through the knowledge transfer that we can share with other stadia around the world, not just in Ireland, and it's the same with the airport. And I suppose, apart from being the right thing to do, we want everywhere to be age-friendly. We want everywhere to be accessible and easy. And if people can get to where they want to go to with ease, that means we have a much more fluid society. I think in the context of airport as well, it's important for us to acknowledge that, there's increased opportunities there with tourism. Do you know what I mean? If people are coming in, it can create footfall, it's better jobs, better quality of life for everyone. So that can't be lost on people as well. But I think that's a nice one for us to wrap up on. Just before we depart, I also always give each speaker the opportunity to point to a website or for more information. And Naomi, I know you were talking about the survey. Is there any points of contact you want to share before we wrap up, or the
Yes,
websites?
I would suggest The first set of surveys will be coming on next month, but we're hoping to have more in October. So I'll reach out to all age-friendly across Ireland and invite if anyone would be interested in carrying out surveys themselves.
Absolutely.
And I'll do that maybe a couple of months before October to give people time.
And our National Transport website, they can visit the NTA's home website for just general information. And there is a route planning website as well, isn't there? The Transport for Ireland, where you can go in and actually do your route planning,
The
which
National
might be
Journey
interesting.
Planner, yes,
Yeah.
that's actually being redone at the moment, and that should be ready now next week. And that's where we have a universal design rating of each of the bus stops.
Brilliant.
And just extra information like that.
I think it's great from our international perspective to come in and sort of see how we're doing that or how we're coordinating that. So from next week that will be live and we can share it on our website. Miriam.
Yeah, I suppose the last thing that I would like to say, and it's our website and all that information is out there, but I would like to say a particular thank you to our staff that we have, because their kindness and their consideration and the care they give our passengers is just incredible. And every day I wonder at things. You know, like a driver came to me this morning before I came out, no wonder I was late. They came to me to say that the bus he was on couldn't go down a lane to pick up a lady and he'd walk down to bring her up to the bus. And he needed to change it for the afternoon. And it's the kindness of people, I think, is what makes the local link service, not just ours, but throughout the country, makes it such a great service. So just thank you.
Personally, I see drivers of whether it's community transport or public service as vocations, because I do see them going above and beyond to be kind, not just to older people, but across the board. And I don't think they always get the recognition for that little bit of extra. So I think I'm delighted you used that platform to say thank you to them, Miriam. I think it's very, very important. Maura, any websites or anything apart from our own in the shared service? Obviously the Mayo Coco, they can go and visit.
Mayo Coco, yeah. We have an age-friendly page on the Mayo County Council website, so I'd invite anybody. And indeed to email myself at agefriendly@Mayo Coco as well, if anybody has any comments or if they want to see age-friendly developed in any particular area of the county, feel free to email me at that address.
Wonderful, Maura, thank you. And Karen?
Yep, on our Clare County Council.ie website, if you go to rural and community, that's where our age-friendly page is, which illustrates all of our age-friendly projects. And equally, we have an email address, which is agefriendlyclare at clarecoco.ie.
Brilliant, so people can get in touch directly. That's fantastic. And as always, agefriendlyireland.ie, agefriendlyhomes.ie for our technical information, publications, legislation, all of that. The video from today will be uploaded on our YouTube channel and on our website, so you can share or watch back. If you want to get in contact with us, there's the generic website or web address on our website, info@agefriendlyireland.ie. Delighted to hear any of your feedback, any comments, and mostly thank you for participating. Thank you to all our speakers for being here today. We look forward to our 6th webinar, which will be held in June, and we'll be circulating that date very shortly. So thank you for joining us today.